ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages.
Yes.
Well, maybe not all ages. Probably not a lot of like 6-month-olds tuning in.
No.
I mean, who knows though?
Yeah.
You see kids younger and younger with tech, so maybe there's some 6-month-olds. They're on like their iPad or something, listening to.
They could be.
Radiant Reflections.
Well, we hope so. Start them young.
Their parents hand it to them. They're like, "Here, this will put you to sleep."
Truth.
That's right.
Truth.
Well, hey, it's episode 8, season 4 of Radiant Reflections. We're hanging out here in the church lobby, as you would have noticed last episode, which we just got done shooting 5 minutes ago.
5 minutes ago.
7 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're here in the church lobby, hanging out, talking about practicing the way. John Mark Comer's book about being with Jesus, becoming like him, and doing the things he did.
It's book club style.
Yeah.
We read a few pages, then we get together each week and we kind of talk through our vociferous amounts of highlighting.
Yep.
And then, yeah.
And at this point, I think we've said it multiple times, you still have time to jump in, catch up.
You do.
It's episode 8, and we're just starting today's discussion on page 53. We've guesstimated.
Yes.
We've guesstimated we'll probably get about 25 episodes.
Yes.
In this particular book.
Yes.
And then maybe we do another book after that. Maybe we do.
Who knows? Who knows?
We'll see.
Yeah.
I had somebody ask me, they're like, do people seem to like the book club style? And the only people I've heard from are my parents. And I think they like it.
Are they reading the book?
They are going through the book with us.
So cool.
Yeah. So
I saw your parents this last Sunday. I bet they were excited.
They're
proud parents.
They're pretty cool people. I like my parents.
Yeah, they're good people. We will finish the first third of the book in episode 8 today, the Be With Jesus, which again is the most primary and important first step. And they are in an order.
There's a linear nature to these things.
Yep. You want to be with Jesus so that you can become like him, so that you will do as he did.
Yes.
Right. It's very stepped in the way that it's laid out.
Because it's hard to become like him without ever being with him.
It's impossible.
Again, you use that apprenticeship language, right? Like I can't be like, you know what, I want to do this skilled trade and then just decide, I'm going to go out and do it.
Right.
Like I'll electrocute myself or something. I don't.
And because we are just finishing up recording episode 7 and going to episode 8, we are not doing any more coffee because our prediction is that the caffeine density in this coffee is high.
Yeah, I'm maybe a borderline shaky, but I brewed a cup. I did a little bit more than I normally do this morning.
So you're doubled up.
I'm doubled up.
I had a double shot before I came.
I did a dose from Heart. I've got a Honduran from Heart. It's quite tasty.
So
then
delicious.
we came and we did this, and I do think this is a potent.
It is.
Because this is a little bit smaller, isn't it? What do you normally do?
No. That was exactly 12 and a half grams each.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did 18 and a half grams this morning in my double shot.
Okay. I did 20. I think I did 20.
Okay.
I did 20 grams of that Honduran from Heart. So
when you get above 30 grams of light roasted coffee, it'll stand you up.
Sturdy.
Yeah.
Sturdy.
Yeah, you're ready to go.
That's a JB-ism.
It is.
Right there.
It is.
So,
top of 53, the reward for following Jesus is Jesus. And let me pause one more time. I know we've done this every time. We're going to keep doing it. Remember, the goal of season 4 of Radiant Reflections is that as you go through this book with us, read it, and as you hear from the Holy Spirit yourself, that you would begin developing a rule of life between you and God, not the practices that Josh and I necessarily do, though you may try them. I've had a lot of people, Josh, well, you particularly, many years ago, Josh, I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe, you gave me the Anglican Book of Prayer and a small, it's a rosary, but not a Catholic, it's an Anglican rosary. I use that every day to this day. I've used it for years, and I use this. So don't be afraid to hear from someone else on something that way that they're connecting with God, because you never know. That might be a key that the Spirit wants to use in your life.
It might be. We're not saying that like you said, we're not saying that you have to do these things.
It's not prescriptive.
Or that you have to do these things the way that we do them.
No.
But yeah, if you're like, I don't even know where to start, maybe you get some ideas
liturgies
on things that you could utilize.
But the goal is, as we get through these episodes, is that you will just kind of start creating that rule of life, right? everybody has rules of life that they're not even aware of, right? There are disciplines and practices that they do. It's like, this is just part of who I am. It's what we do. It's what our family does.
Right. You don't miss a Lions game for anything. That's
Right.
that's a rule of life.
It is a rule of life.
So-
That's right. Right. You don't eat any food that has or could contain mayonnaise in it at all, ever. You do not put that in your body.
I'd be curious if there's anyone else out there that I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
Did I send you years ago? Because I mean, I've known this about you for a long time. Did I send you the Reese Roper from 5 Iron Frenzy? Did I ever send you that or show
Is
you
it when
that?
they like smeared all over their face? Or
No. So it's when they were doing their Kickstarter campaign.
Okay.
This would have been back in 2011.
Okay.
When Engine of a Million Plots came out, they did a Kickstarter campaign. Their goal was like 30 grand. They raised like 250 grand. I
Goodness.
think at the time they set a record or something.
Wow.
But one of the videos that Reese Roper, their lead singer, did was him wandering through the desert. And he's doing like desert survival. And one of the things he does is he finds this jar of mayonnaise. And so he's just sitting there like eating mayonnaise straight out of the jar. Oh, they were one of my favorite bands to watch live. I remember seeing them. I've probably told this story before. Cornerstone Festival 2000,
Yes.
Bushnell, Illinois.
Been there.
They played the main stage. You've got 10,000 people sitting here. And they throw piñatas out into the audience. And they just start like ripping them to shreds. They had filled these piñatas with pork and beans. Oh my! This is in July. It's hot. It's sticky, and now you've got people covered.
Like actual pork? It wasn't in a jar?
No, it was like actual.
Oh
like,
my gosh. That's gross.
Oh, but no, he does. He does a
gross.
thing where he just eats mayonnaise straight out of the jar. That would probably make me vomit. I'm not a huge fan of mayo, but
Yeah. The point is, there's a rule of life for everybody. Like you've got these rules of life, right? You watch the game, you do this, your family does this. There is a rule of life that should be developed between you and God, and that's part of the purpose of this book. The reward for following Jesus is Jesus. What's sticking out on 53, Josh? I don't have anything on this page.
See, I love
Henry Nouwen's.
I love the Nouwen quote,
Yeah.
right? Because this I feel like is representative of me, and not just when I've had extra.
But what just happened when we were talking about mayonnaise?
Yes, that my mind is like a banana tree filled with monkeys. Except in my case, it's like a banana tree filled with monkeys who are highly caffeinated, or on like cocaine or something.
That could be something.
So.
There's a movie that came out, speaking of bananas or monkeys in a banana tree, called Cocaine Bear. And it's based on a true story. Like someone dropped some bricks of coke out of a plane or something and it landed in the wilderness, and a bear got into these bricks of coke and became addicted and became like a savage, whatever. I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't want to tangle with a bear
at all.
Anyways.
Yeah.
If he's like totally running high on coke, that'd be...
Yeah, I don't know if there's a better way to be.
Bad news bears.
Oh boy, there we go. Well, there's your single dose in episode 8 of Banana Trees Filled with Monkeys via Josh and JB.
But I do like, towards the bottom of 53, he's talking about just the fast pace of our culture, and he hits on an important thing. He says some of this stuff sounds like a waste of time. I am averse to things that are not productive. I don't like unproductive time. So that has been something. I think that's one of the reasons they called it a discipline, right? Is you have to intentionally choose to slow down, to choose to be okay with unproductive time.
Yeah.
But I use that in quotes because the way that we measure productivity is often wrong.
Yes.
Jesus says that when we abide in him, again, which we were kind of talking about a little bit in the last episode, and we'll probably get into it today, right? That abiding is actually the only way to, in a kingdom sense, be productive.
Right.
Right. So we have to challenge our cultural understanding of productivity. Nicole and I last night we were watching JMC's stuff, which if you don't currently have access to Right Now Media, which is basically a Netflix of Bible studies and resources, you have access to that through Radiant Life Church. I would encourage you, if you don't, shoot me an email, just josh@theradiantlife.church. Put in the subject line, just put Right Now Media. I can add you to our account. Because you have access to JMC's Practicing the Way stuff.
Yes.
So Nicole and I we were watching the first episode in the Sabbath series, because this is a
stirring
part of a rule of life related thing. We're trying to develop. We haven't got there yet, but this is part of that. We're working to develop. And we're watching that, and he makes a really kind of gut punch statement. He says, we live in a culture that not only runs too fast, but we celebrate and brag.
Yes.
About like, oh man, I've worked 18 days in a row without a day off. And we use it as it's a status thing.
Yeah.
Which is so toxic and unhealthy and so contrary to the model that God gave us.
Yep. There's stories of Elon Musk, doing 80 and 90, 100-hour weeks where he will be in a factory. This is Elon Musk. He's a multi-billionaire. And he'll sleep just for a couple, 2-3 hours on a factory floor, or like a Tesla factory or something, a rocket factory. And he brags about it. He's like, you want to make it in life. You want to be like me. This is what you're going to have to do. And,
I don't know. I don't know if that's the way to be.
No.
So
anything else on 53, Josh?
No, because our one I'll get into on in a few later pages here. So
yeah. 54 is kind of getting still talking about prayer, waste of time. That second sentence and second paragraph, prayer, that is being with Jesus, is our primary portal to joy. It's the best part, not just of each day, but of life. Prayer of any kind will always remain a chore, another task on our religious to-do list, until we come to realize that Jesus himself is our exceedingly great reward. That the reward for following Jesus is, Jesus. It's the sheer joy of friendship with him.
Well, and that goes against, and you referenced it this way in our last episode, kind of that lever and biscuit approach to prayer, to where we think of prayer, I pray so that Jesus will do these things that I'm really hoping that he will do. And if we go into prayer that way, it's not that he never answers, some of those prayers, but I think if we always go into it, that transactional mindset, we're going to ultimately walk away disappointed.
Yeah.
And it will feel discouraging, because we're saying, I'm praying about this stuff. I'm bringing all these things to Jesus, and nothing is changing. But I think it's because we've made the focal point of our prayers us. Like ultimately, I am praying with myself as the ultimate end game.
Right.
Because I want, even if I'm bringing requests for other people, I'm thinking, hey, I want to bring these things, and if you don't answer JB's need that I'm praying for, Lord, you let me down again.
There's a powerful self-focus that can kind of creep into our practices and disciplines that forgets about the goal of ministering to God, to blessing God, and then coming out of that, the monastics would call your cell or your quiet place, and ministering to others. That's really the point. It isn't supposed to be about us. Though it does change us.
Oh, for sure. But I liked, there's a slightly different context. We were talking, I had the opportunity to talk a little bit with Rachel Sutton after worship practice last week. And she was talking about just this shift in mindset, really encouraging us to have this mindset as we engage with other people, to have a transformational, not a transactional mindset. Like, hey, how do I, engage in conversation in such a way that Holy Spirit can use this in a transforming way in this person's life? I think the same idea can apply to prayer. Do I go into it with that transactional mindset of like, all right, I'm going to do all these things, and then he's going to do this.
God's obligated
for me, right? Versus, do I go into that space ultimately with the heart of, all right, I want to be with Jesus so that I will be transformed, as he sees fit, not as I think I need to be transformed, but I'm going to just sit there and let him do the things.
Yeah, the change in the results of prayer are actually after being with him. The first goal, the first thing is to be with him. And then once you're with him, things might change and they might not. You might pray for years and things don't change. I love there at the bottom of 54 going into 55. It's a lot of to read, but I think it's important, Josh, and we'll talk a little bit about the audit. The important thing is just to keep praying. Stay with it. The one non-negotiable rule of prayer is this: keep showing up. Stay with the process until you experience what all the fuss is about. Don't stop until you know by direct experience what I'm stumbling to name with words. And then this is something I think we should camp on. For years, when I read about monks and nuns who gave up a normal life to do little else besides prayer, I'd think they were a little crazy. For the record, some of them were, and some were more than a little. But what if we're the ones who are unhinged? We would rather binge Netflix or go shopping or play fantasy football than commune with love-loving. Who would rather give the vast majority of our time to slaving away for some job that will chew us up and spit us out the moment we're no longer useful to the bottom line? Who choose to spend hours every day on our phones, yet claim we don't have time for God? What if we're the ones who've lost touch with reality, who are wasting our lives on trivial things? And this goes into a really good, I think, an important conversation about having some awareness in our lives about how we're spending our time, which is where we talk about an audit, Josh. And this is just a practice of literally getting some data, some metrics. Some of you people that don't like spreadsheets, you might not like this part of the podcast, but just paying attention, because I think, we deceive ourselves about how much time we're actually devoting to certain things. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, and this is a line you use with your overflow cohort. You can't you can't grow what you don't track. Because we do have blinders. Like this is one of those struggles, right? I mean, I've had conversations with people. I mean, he talks about the phones, and they'll be lamenting because I'll ask you, "Hey, how's it going?" Like, are you having time with the Lord? Or whatever. They're like, I've been so busy, I don't have time. And it's like, all right, show me your phone. And you'll look, and it's like, hey, dude, you're averaging 5 to 6 hours a day on your phone.
Goodness. Yeah.
Like, you can't sit here and tell me you don't have time.
Right.
But I mean, those things are designed to grab and hold our attention.
Yeah.
They're there to suck every last bit of attention out of us. I mean, and I'm not opposed to, things like playing Nintendo or whatever, but this is the fun conversation with, like particularly my sons, because they'll be like, hey, we want to play, Mario Kart or something. I'm like, okay, you can play Mario Kart. And then you'll come in a little while later and say, all right, hey guys, let's shut it down. We've only been playing for like 10 minutes. It's like, it's been an hour.
An hour's plenty of time,
right? And this is more than you should about it, but to them,
right?
Oh, we've hardly been on it at all.
Right.
It's like,
because psychologically, the design is made to make you experience that.
Yes.
And until you start kind of tracking those things, you're not going to know. Which is why I think, you could use technology to really help you. The same phone that tells you you've been on it for 5 to 6 hours in these categories has some really powerful screen time limitations, and essentially they're budgets. Josh mentioned a moment ago, one of our, forgive the word, mantras in the overflow cohort is, you can't grow what you don't track. Friends, that's true in every part of your life. I mean, it doesn't matter what your diet or way of eating looks like. Like, there's all these different paleo, keto, carnivore, all this kind of stuff. The bottom line is, if you don't take in less calories than you are burning in a day, you can't lose weight. That's a tracking thing. If you and Nicole decide to go out and buy a new car, you're going to have to look at the price of that car. You're going to have to look at your income in your bank account. Maybe you start a secondary savings account. And over a period of a year, you put X dollars per month into that secondary. You track it. And then after a year, you go and buy the car.
Right.
You cannot grow what you don't track. And so the beginning of a rule of life is an audit. Is to pay attention and to learn, how am I actually spending my time, my money? What am I doing with my body? How am I sleeping? How much time am I devoting to the Nintendo or whatever it is? Then you've got something to work with, but you can't work with what you don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Awareness is the key.
Yeah, because we have those blinders. We also, and we don't realize how, oh man, I spent X amount of time on this thing, and Who would have thought?
We've all been there, Josh.
Oh, for sure.
Listeners, viewers, like you'll be on your phone and you're sitting there, and you'll be scrolling reels on Instagram and you'll have that same experience your boys had. You're like, oh yeah, I've only been doing this for 5 minutes or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I've been sitting here for 25 minutes just doing this.
I mean, you do something like YouTube, right? You're on YouTube on your phone. Like, hey, one video gets done, it's gonna automatically start something else.
And that one's good.
And it'll show
watch that one.
Ooh, what's this one about? Like,
it's terrible.
Like the
how
algorithm
crafty.
knows you. Like it will put things out there that you want to partake of.
And Josh and I are not saying, like, we're not Luddites. We're not saying get rid of your phones. We're not saying get rid of your social media or your video games or any of those kinds of things. We're saying, all things in moderation, but you don't know what moderation is until you know how much you're taking in.
Well, and this is where too, maybe for some people, they need a shock to the system in the sense that, let's say you go to your screen time and you're like, holy cow, my average is 2 hours a day on Facebook or Instagram or, X or, whatever.
Yep.
Okay, maybe I need to actually step back. I mean, put those limits in place. Like, and you have an important, an important piece of that. Unpack that a little bit.
What I want to say is that we just finished up a 1-year journey with the Overflow cohort with some folks with the GLR. One of the worship leaders, he's actually not at the Wesleyan church he was at anymore. Michael Johnson is his name. Young South African worship leader. He turned me on to this early in the cohort. So just to tell you my journey with screen time. Initially, it started with graphing it, like just literally putting minutes in a spreadsheet that would auto calculate and it would tell me. And then I was like wanting to throw up in my mouth. Like, is so sinful. It was just, in my case, this was sinful. Like this is a gigantic waste of time. And then Michael was like, what I do is I have limitations set up on every app on my phone that's social media based. And there's a 4-digit code linked to that screen time that only my wife has. And I'm listening to Michael say this, and months go by, and I'm continuing to track my time, and I'm trying like I'm bootstraps, right? I'm not gonna whatever, I just won't do it. Self-control is a limited resource, and we run out of it very fast. Then I made the hard switch, and I imposed a minute-based budget on all social media apps. So on my phone, Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube. I have TikTok, but I don't really use it. It's more for my business. But when I spend all the minutes, it's locked out, and my wife Lisa is the only one with the code. And so if I want to have like a really big piece of humble pie, and I haven't done this since I've imposed it. I need that code so that I can. I'm gonna have some more YouTube.
I love you, honey.
Your hair's so pretty today. But she knows that the discipline is in place for me, and I'm telling you, the freedom in my life when I put a boundary in place, it's unbelievable. It's like, this is so much better because when it comes to the end of my minutes, it's done. That's it. That's how it goes, and I'm done with that. And I spend my time in better ways for the rest of the day.
No, that's good. As I've referenced it before on here, read through part of a book called Digital Minimalism, and that really challenged me to set limits. I didn't set it on my phone because I don't access Facebook on my phone. That's a
limit, though. That is a limit.
But then it's like, hey, I'm only gonna scroll in for non-work purposes. I run one of our Facebook pages for the church, the outreach page. So for non-church related things, I will only allow myself one time per week to actually get in if I want to like scroll. But doing that,
good for you.
Doing that, you actually realize like, oh man, it's been
I don't care about
3
this
weeks because I'm not actually missing anything.
Yeah.
When you're doing like, I should probably log in and see if there's any like. And there's this weird mindset of like, I've got to be engaged and plugged in and stay connected. Yeah. You're not actually missing anything by not being on social
Especially
media.
at this time of year. I mean, by the time you watch this podcast, we might have a president at that time.
Well, I mean, we will have a president.
We will have a president, but will it be official, and will they count this, that, and everything's burning down? We don't know.
We may or may not have we might have elected a new president,
yes.
But we will still have a president,
yes,
regardless.
Yes, but right now, I mean, the social medias are a cesspool of nonsense surrounding politics.
Yes.
So I think it is important for us to have some awareness around how we're spending our time, because that's going to open up some time to do things with Jesus that you really do want to do. Stop telling yourself that you don't. Don't blame it all on your flesh. There might be part of that, but deep inside of you, if you are born again, if you know Jesus, if you have the Holy Spirit, you want to be with him. So let's start doing the things that allow us to do what we truly want to do. Because I don't know about you, I never go away from like a binge time on Instagram or on YouTube and feel like, man, I just feel so much more holy and close to Jesus.
That was the most uplifting.
I feel so good.
Most uplifting experience of my life.
I don't want to buy anything. Like, I don't feel like the things I have are not as good. There's no covetousness. This never happens. It's what happens every time. All right.
I would recommend it. I've referenced before on here, Analog Christian by Pastor J. Kim.
Yeah.
He looks
Andy
at...
Crouch is another one.
He looks at kind of the digital landscape and applies what does it look like to cultivate the fruit of the Spirit in opposition to the things that social media in particular is trying to cultivate in us. Right? The whole thing is to try to get our attention, but it also is trying to create, and this is all advertising really, is trying to create discontent, which is totally opposite of the call of Jesus in our lives.
It is.
Jesus says, hey, if you have food and clothing, be content with
Birds
that.
of the air. Yes.
Be content. But so much of what we put in, so much of what is forming us is intentionally creating more discontent.
Yes.
That you need this or that thing, or oh wow, look at John and Sue have this thing. I should have that thing. They look really happy in that picture. I want to be really happy.
Josh, a light bulb just went off.
Okay.
What if
is it going to mess up the lighting in the shot?
Oh, jeez, listen to this guy. What if you were to track? I might start doing this. What if you were to track your time on social media, minutes, and then put a parallel tracking of dollars spent just on Amazon? Then the following month, like let's do 1 month, no restrictions. I guarantee you will cut your spending. You will affect your budget, your bottom dollar, which then allows you to give to the things of God, allows you to support your brothers and sisters who may be in need. I guarantee that if you reduce your intake of social media, your bank account will grow. I believe
that is well, I mean, you think about it, and this is one of the things that I really started to get fed up with Facebook in particular, is over the years, the number, like every second or third post is an ad.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's gotten to be ridiculous.
Yeah. No,
so
it is. It definitely is. And I want to just pause a moment and say something that's I feel like is a really cool thing in our community. I hung out with Chad last night. Chad and I went down to Fort Wayne. He bought a new Jeep, really cool. Oh, he bought a cool one. Anyway, so we had a great drive down there and back. And he shared with me that this year the Sturgis school system has imposed a no phone rule. Initially, when they proposed this idea, a lot of people kicked back. Students kicked back. Parents actually kicked back because they were afraid. They want to have contact safety. They want to be able to hear from their kids during the school day.
For like a
school shooting and
for a lot of years.
Oh, I know. I know.
Sorry.
I get it though. I mean, fear is another thing that has been heightened due to our awareness. The more information we have, the more fear we have.
But is it actually aware? Sorry, I don't want to get too sideways from what you're saying. And it's been a while since I've referenced this. Jonathan Haidt,
Coddling of the American
Mind. Mm-hmm. He talks about that, and he talks about how ill-informed some of our fear is. Hey, I can't let my kids go out walking or riding their bike because they might get kidnapped. Right. And he actually looks at the statistics.
Violent crimes
regarding,
down.
But regarding things like kidnapping, like the vast majority is, if this happens, it's usually somebody that knows them. Maybe it's like you've got parents that are split, and like one parent takes them or something like this. He says the percentage of people that are actually homicide van pulls up, they jump out, grab somebody and throw them in the van and take off.
It's crazy.
It's like, that's like
infinitesimal.
super low.
Infinitesimal.
But how much do we let that dictate the decisions that we make for our kids? Right?
That's true.
Oh man, Yeah, I'm sorry.
Chad shared, he shared that they have this no phone rule, and it's to this level. Like the kids have to, they can't, they're not even supposed to check it in between classes. Like it lives in their locker room, and they have a very strict punishment policy. One is like step 1, Chad said it was a write-up. Step 2 is a 1-day suspension. Step 3, I think, was expulsion.
Whew.
Like it's deadly serious. And they're a ways in, and all the 80 plus percent, 88%, I think was what Chad said, of the teachers are like, this is amazing. Every child is more engaged. They're more present in the classroom. Why didn't we do this a long time ago? But what you need to know, Chad does say, he's like, but when after school, you go into the locker room, because he's one of the football coaches, and he said, the kids are like this. Because there is actually an addiction.
Oh, for sure.
And there's a chemical dopamine related addiction to social media. It's proven scientifically. This is not a faith-based statement at all. So as you become aware of how much you're taking in, and as you make those decisions, buckle up. You will experience some withdrawals. You're going to experience some resistance.
Well, if you do, that actually highlights the addiction. This was a really, so I was talking to my counselor, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and we were talking about sleep and caffeine and things like that. Mm-hmm. I said, I've been cutting back on caffeine a little bit and this, that, and the other thing. But I made some comment about being addicted to caffeine. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, you're not addicted to caffeine. Mm-hmm. He says, addicts don't scale back. He says, addicts only increase
consumption.
Because as you develop a tolerance for this thing, you need more to elicit that same dopamine.
It's called tasting the dragon.
So that could be telling. If you say, hey, I'm not gonna look at Facebook today. I'm gonna take one day and not look at it. And if you get like jonesing for for that Facebook, or you feel incomplete without scrolling, that just might be an indicator of the level of addiction that you have. And again, we're not saying that as a slam against you. It's designed to do that.
They're against you.
So
the science is against you. Yeah. Find your secret place. Okay, so you come out of this audit, you become aware of how you're spending your time. You're realizing, okay, I need a spot. I need a dedicated space. I need a sanctified space, a place, not that we can't meet with God anywhere, because we can't. God is everywhere, and where you seek him, you will find him. Knock, he's going to answer. But there is something, Josh, to a place. And, I've talked a little bit about, I've got a desk similar to this that's butted up against a window at my house, and allows me to look out to the lake in the mornings. Right now, it's just darkness, and it's going to be darkness for a while. But at any rate, I go down there, and I have a process. I have a secret place that I go to connect with Jesus. What's that look like for you? And
so and this is where, and we in take one we hit on this a little bit. I do want to revisit. It is important.
We got to move.
We got.
So we want to get to the space.
Okay.
Sorry, Josh.
I do think it's important that we not overly dictate what this looks like, but also recognizing for you, hey, you have this space, you have this rhythm. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to be in that space to connect with Jesus.
What did Jesus do himself?
Right, because he wasn't always going to the same place, as far as we know.
But he did always go to a place.
A place.
It said he would go to this secret place. He would go out into the woods. He would go by himself. He would go into the desert.
But we also know Jesus traveled a pretty good route, right? To where it's not like, oh crap, I couldn't make it to that chair at that time in the morning. Again, it wasn't that legalistic approach that we sometimes see. Yeah. I have a little bit of flexibility with mine. I've got little kids at home. When we were at the pastors conference, one of the mornings out there in Portland, I'm sitting there by the table, and Kinsey's he's like, oh, hey, sorry, like I'll try to be quiet. I'm like, dude, I got 6 kids at home. Like the amount of noise you're making around, that doesn't even register.
This is a blessing.
That doesn't even show up on the radar. Yeah. So I will often, particularly on mornings that I go and work out, which I don't do every morning as early. Mm-hmm. But on those early mornings, then I'm usually in that space. As soon as I get back, then I engage with scripture. I do those things. I don't do my scripture first thing when I wake up, because my brain is puddle of goop.
Yeah.
First thing in the morning. So
It's part of your rule of life.
for
You're
me,
learning
yeah.
it.
So it's I want to be fully present in that moment.
Well, Aaron 56, he says kind of midway down, and this is, I think, what Josh and I are agreeing with, but also challenging. Environment matters. Certain environments help me focus on my work, while others sabotage my best intentions.
Well, and I think the key thing there is that environment could be different from one person to another.
And it could be different within a season.
Yeah.
Like your season with littles, it's different. And he says that there in the next small paragraph. In the same way, if we want to reach the depth of life with God that Jesus modeled, we need to find a diversion-free place to get away and be alone with the Father. Because what we know from our previous pages, we just discussed, attention's the issue. We need to find a place where we get the best shot, the best chance.
And some of this could look different too, depending on some of the different modalities that maybe you want to use. Gary Thomas wrote his book, Sacred Pathways, and I loaned it out, or I'd have it here to give you the 9.
Right.
But he talks about these different ways. He uses the term spiritual temperaments, that, we are each wired a little bit differently in the sense that, you've talked about looking out at the lake.
Yeah.
In previous episodes, you've referenced Pine Knob, being out on the trails, and how for you that's an impactful place.
Currently,
for you to,
pickleball.
Yeah, to these different environments where you can connect and experience the love of God, right? And depending on those spiritual temperaments, that could look a little bit different for some of us, right? Like there is deep impact in going through a liturgy. Some people, like, you lose your mind.
Sure.
Going through that versus some people, it is going to be, a little bit more of like that activist. Man, I experience the love of God when I am out serving other people. Pick up the book. It's a great, great
it's
read.
good.
But we don't want to be overly.
Who's the author again?
Gary Thomas.
So I'm starting this morning. I started a book by him in my spiritual direction coursework called Anatomy of the Soul.
Oh.
I haven't read it yet.
I think I have that one on my shelf. I haven't read it yet.
It has some psychological components to spiritual formation. I'm interested. It'll be good.
But so that's one of those things. Again, we don't want to be overly prescriptive,
right?
In the way that we talk about the secret place, because it could look different for each and every.
Well, the last sentence on 57 there, I think, is important. For Jesus, the secret place wasn't just a place. It was a practice, a habit, a part of his life rhythm. That's probably what we're purporting the most, or we would be prescribing as your friends, to say you just need to have a habit of connecting with Jesus, however that looks. One day it might look like a walk, another day it might look like kneeling. There's all sorts of different things. 58, Josh, because we want to get to our goal is to get to
he just hits on the idea of solitude, silence, and stillness. Again, this is something, it could look a little bit different for some people. Like for you right now, you're in a space where to get 2 minutes of just, hey, I'm quiet, I'm still, there's nothing else going on. 2 minutes is going to be uncomfortable.
Start.
But it's a place to start. And some of you need to go connect with the Hermitage northwest of Three Rivers there and do a day or multiple days silent retreat. And that would just totally fill your cup, kind of thing.
The point of the solitude is, the Nowan quote there at the top of 58, without solitude, it is virtually impossible to live a spiritual life. And the reason why that is because in solitude, the voice of God becomes louder, right? You begin to hear him more, which is the whole point, right? As we hear the voice of God, this helps us make decisions. This helps guide us and direct us. It helps correct us. But without solitude, we risk being impacted by our phones, by other people that are sinful like us with opinions and thoughts about what we should and shouldn't do. But in solitude, it's just us and God. And a lot of folks, that is a scary place, but it is an important place. Anything else on solitude on 58?
No, but just bottom of 59 before we get into that last section. Because this highlights, again, the diversity in what this could look like. He says, so work with your personality, not against it. Tailor your practice to your Myers-Briggs type and stage of life, but find your secret place. Go there as often as you can. Prioritize it. Fall in love with it, with God. Without quiet prayer, your life with God will wither. With it, you will come alive to the greatest joy of life, a familiar friendship to Jesus.
That's accessed through prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jumping over to 60, and the first time we shot this podcast, we did highlight, and we will again. One of John Mark's seminal works was The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Many of you listeners, viewers may have read that. Maybe you listened to the podcast series. That was a game changer for us, Josh.
That was, and we did, this would have been summer.
Our worship team went through that chapter by chapter.
Summer of 21. I think Kinsey and I did it. We did a whole series on it called Slow the Hurry. And that was, we took that straight out of that because that was such an impactful work. I think that was my first exposure to JMC. He had written things before that.
Yeah.
I had never read them.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who was first on staff. It was probably you because you're the pioneer on these things.
I've been reading a lot of John Mark for years. Garden City is another one. God Has a Name, some of his earlier books. Garden City's really good if you want to read something on Sabbath.
So I have that on my shelf. Haven't read it yet.
Brueggemann's.
Given that that's part of the...
If you're going to start anywhere on Sabbath, start with Brueggemann's.
Okay.
Walter Brueggemann. It's a small book, maybe 100 pages, and it's called Sabbath as Resistance. It's literally like...
Oh, you've referenced that one.
Game changer.
Got it.
That's a game changer. But at any rate, the heading there on page 60, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And we did this in our first take. I think it's important we do it again. Just going to read a fairly decent section of 60 because they are single sentences. The call to apprentice under Jesus is not a call to do more, but to do less. I want to pause right there, Josh, and remind listeners and viewers. Listeners, viewers, don't forget, the start of a rule of life and developing a rule of life is never addition. If you have someone who's telling you, you need to do this, and this, at the beginning stages of your development of a rule of life, run fast, run far. That's probably legalism. It's probably an authoritarian or dictatorial control. You need to be wary of a voice like that in your life, because the truth about our developing a rule of life, it's always, and I'm using that superlative, it's always subtraction before it's addition.
This is the beauty of the audit, though.
Yes.
Right, of tracking
awareness
is that
first.
we recognize what are the things. Because if I look at my screen time and lo and behold, I'm spending 2.5 hours every day playing this game on my phone. Hey, this is something that ultimately. Is it wrong to play games on your phone? No.
Have fun.
No. But should I be devoting 2.5 hours to this game on my phone? I'm going to go with no.
No.
I'm going to go with no.
No.
And I'm saying this for me personally. And I said this is actually a personal example. This was years ago, and I've probably shared this on here before. I had a game on my phone.
Okay.
And I found one day after, talking to somebody else about their phone, I'm like, I got to click in to see what mine is. and sure enough,
sobering
from that
experience?
past week, I was putting about 2 hours a day on my phone on this game.
Wow.
So I said, at the time I was in a D group with Chris Kidd, one of our elders. I said, hey, in 2 weeks, I want you to check in with me and I'm going to pull up my screen time in front of you. And if it's over this, whatever threshold we set, reduce the threshold. But if it's over that, and in your presence, I'll delete this game off my phone. Kind of a thing. And
beautiful.
And it was
beautiful accountability.
So having
Josh.
that though, so then we get there and I was over it by like 2 or 3 minutes, but I'm over it. So we deleted that game.
Good for you.
Because it was one of those things that it sucked so much attention. It's like, this is not a beneficial thing. So that's that subtraction, but I wouldn't know what to subtract until
you track
track to see where is my time going.
Yeah. That's what he says. It's not addition, but subtraction. It's not about increasing complexity, but about pursuing simplicity. It's less about habit stacking than it is about learning to say no. Jesus is calling you to slow down and simplify your life around the 3 goals of an apprentice: to be with your rabbi, become like him, and do as he did. To make apprenticeship to him the animating center of gravity for your entire life. The elephant in the room is that the vast majority of us are far too much. We have far too much going on to add Jesus into our overly busy schedules. I'm so sorry, but I don't know how to soften the blow. There's simply no way to follow Jesus without unhurrying your life. You've talked often about good yeses and good knows. Talk a little bit more about that when you talk about simplicity, John.
Yeah,
or unhurrying.
It's learning. Well, because part of the reason we're so hurried is because we've crammed so many things into our day, right?
Yeah.
And often these are good things, but we start to grab onto more and more, and before you know it, we have zero margin. And this can take the form of, whether it's the amount of time I spend, maintaining all of the things that I bought that I don't need. I mean, it gets,
oh my gosh,
there's so much interconnectedness here. And then that was the beauty of, again, ruthless elimination of hurry, because he talks about 4 practices in particular that work towards that unhurried life. He talks about Sabbath. He talks about slowing down. He talks about silence and solitude, and he talks about simplicity. Right? How much of our time do we spend trying to maintain things that we don't need in the first place? How much time do we spend trying to earn extra money to buy things that we don't need because we saw an advertisement in our 3 hours on Facebook? I mean, it's all interconnected.
It's a big ball of wax.
Oh, it's messy. So it's learning, hey, what are the things that we should say no to? And that's hard. And I think we've complicated this in church world, because, we do all have a role to play in the body, although I would suggest that doesn't necessarily mean a role in these 4 walls. Yes, we come together in the gathering. Some of us have a kingdom purpose where we work.
Yeah.
We use that language, where we live, work, and play.
Yep.
You might have somebody who's a stay-at-home mom. Their kingdom purpose is raising their kids as disciples of Jesus.
Yeah.
Like that's
powerful
that
work.
is a valid kingdom impact. But we sometimes present things like, oh, well, you know what? You should really be doing something. And so we keep asking people to do more without walking alongside them to help realize, hey, what are the things that we need to say no to in order to say yes to this?
Absolutely.
Because the opposite is true. Everything we say yes to, we're saying no to something else.
Yeah.
And often the things that we say yes to lead us to say no to some of the most important things.
Yes. Next page, we'll get into that,
Okay.
the renunciations. But the bottom there, Dallas Willard famously said, the great enemy of spiritual life in our day, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And John Mark says, hurry is arguably the number one challenge you will face should you decide to take following Jesus seriously. Like an enemy, it won't just stand in your way, it will actively fight against you. And I feel that some days in my schedule. I feel like my schedule and my calendar is fighting against my ability to be present with God and present with others. It's a daily struggle.
It is. And I appreciate, so Pastor Brandon, I've asked him to challenge me on these things. He'll look at my calendar and he'll say, you've got like back to back
no
things.
breath.
Like where's your margin in that? Because that does create then, I've created space where it's, you don't have time to even process what happened here before you're on to the next thing and on to the next thing, on to the next thing.
Yep.
And then you get done with it and you're like, man, why am I so freaking tired?
Yeah. Maybe it's because I had so much going on. Yeah.
Should have made a 25 gram dose.
61 there, just before we get to this last page, John Mark says, we have time-torn lives. We want to be with Jesus, but we just don't have time to pray. We genuinely desire to grow into people of love, but our to-do lists are too long to make any serious attempt. We know rest is the secret to the spiritual journey, but Sabbath? That's 1/7 of our lives. And yet we are totally unsatisfied. We feel hurried, anxious, far from God, spiritually shallow, and stuck in our self-defeating habits of behavior. The spiritual journey to reach the heights of the kingdom has hit a plateau. The way has become a loop. Easter has become Groundhog Day. I just thought it's so beautifully written. And then going over to page 62,
he hits on the audit.
He talks about the audit there at the top. So this will require us to take intentional steps to slow down. It will likely start with a formation audit of our lives where we take a serious look at how we spend our time and cut out more than we add in a desire to be with Jesus. And so we're just going to continue to say that, you talked the first time we shot this about Ronald Rolheiser's quote there at the bottom. Every choice.
Oh yeah. And that's challenging because again, especially when the things you're saying yes to are good things. Somebody comes to you with an opportunity, and sometimes it's fueled out of a true desire to do good. Sometimes though we give these yeses, and it's people pleasing, which you're always going to wind up disappointed if pleasing people is your goal, because you can't ever make everybody happy. No. But we live with this kind of, and again, this is coming from my own, struggle of sometimes we live with this God complex of thinking we can be everything to everybody all the time, and we can't.
No.
Scazzaro writes, Tripp writes about the gift of limits and the beauty of recognizing that we can't do everything, that I don't have every gifting, I don't have every calling, so it's like, all right, what is the lane that God wants me to run in? And can I be okay to say no to the things that aren't that?
Yeah. I mean, he says that kind of towards the bottom. I've literally quit my job twice now, in large part to live a slower, simpler life. So far, my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. Hopefully this will not require you to quit your job, but it may. For most of us, it will just require us to cancel a few digital subscriptions, apologetically bow out of a few obligations, watch less TV, go to bed earlier to get up and pray, and just make space in our days to pause, to breathe, and to abide. So Josh and I are not going to just say that this ideal of a rule of life is going to be painless, because it won't be. You are going to have to say no to some things for the better things. And it will mean going to bed early and getting up a little earlier.
But if I go to bed earlier, I won't be able to watch as many episodes. And if you feel like I'm making fun of you, this is literally, I'm talking to me. I'm talking to me right now. I'm going to watch as many episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Right. Ted Lasso. Oh man. Yeah. It is a challenge. And there's an ebb and flow. And I think there are seasons of how that looks in every person's life. But again, our goal for you, Season 4 of Radiant Reflections, is that you will take some of these things and create a rule of life. Josh, we finished the first third of the book today on episode 8, Be with Jesus. We hope that as we've gone through this section and just gleaned everything we could, squeezed all the juice out of this book with John Mark Comer, that you are convinced that you need to make some changes to be with Jesus, because you do. You need to be with him. Josh, I felt like we closed yesterday with a challenge, and now I can't remember what it was.
I don't either.
I don't either.
So maybe
that's why.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah. Well, friends, we want to continue to ask you to like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on Spotify. Give us a 5-star and rated review on Apple Music, on YouTube. Push this out to your social media platforms. The more people that hear about this podcast, the more it grows. And we like to think that it's a meaningful podcast. We do it because we believe in the things that we're reading and the ways that we're growing. And we just want to see more people experience that life in Christ. So, we'll be with you next time with a new president. Well, no, we already have one. But at
maybe,
this time.
because I'm trying to picture a calendar in my brain. Because do we vote next Tuesday?
We vote next Tuesday.
As of the recording, not when
this episode will air, not the following Wednesday, the 5th. This episode you're watching will air on November 12th. This will.
No.
Tuesday the 4th. Yeah.
No, because
no. This will
air the day after.
Yeah, Wednesday the 5th. Yeah.
So we'll have just found out who the new president will be.
That's right.
Okay.
We'll see what happens. Well, blessings to you guys.
God is in control either way.
So. That's right. We'll see you next week.